Hi friends, welcome back. Today I'm going to be talking with my husband. His name is Mike, and I'm going to be asking him some questions on your behalf. The questions that I remember you guys asking. Hopefully I can remember everything. But yeah, so what it's like to be a rad dad. In the beginning, like before I came along, so just a refresher, I came along, my stepdaughter was 8. So before I came along, was there anything that stood out to you about her that kind of told you in the back of your mind something's maybe not right?
Well, yeah, she seemed to be more of a difficult child. Wouldn't take instruction very well. She was difficult for my mother to kind of take care of. She was difficult for teachers to take care of, to watch, to get her to mind. Daycare providers always had to kind of take me to the side and say, hey, your kid's basically difficult. I guess perhaps what they were meaning is she wasn't taking instruction well. She was kind of doing her own thing, wasn't acting as
Wasn't minding.
As other kids should have that were very similar in age and demographic. But I was a very busy dad, so I owned and operated a retail business, so that engulfed an enormous amount of my time, and then was very busy with many different civic groups in our small community. So, even though I was the sole parent taking care of her, I wasn't around a lot day to day. So a lot of the things kind of just went in one ear and out the other when someone kind of complained about her difficult behavior.
So you maybe even viewed it as a strength?
Yeah. Well, I thought she was a strong-willed kid because I was kind of a turd for my parents. So I always figured, well, yeah, you get back threefold what you did to your parents. So I figured that was kind of what I was getting. I was strong-headed, and so I thought that's what she was.
So after I came on the scene, did you see any type of difference? There's probably other rad dads out there maybe having a hard time believing their wife or believing the mom about behaviors. In the beginning, did you see those behaviors? Did you believe me, or were there...
The RAD behaviors?
Yeah.
No, because I didn't really know what RAD was. I met a woman who I was gaga about, and I wanted to get to know you and who you were and everything. And I, in my mind, kind of thought we were going to blend our two families together, your two children and mine, and that we would have some bumps along the way, but we would be able to get it figured out and raise these kids up and give them what they were lacking from not having the other parent from the other marriages. So when you started complaining about these behaviors, I was trying to read between the lines, like, okay, well, I don't really know you and the situation, and I'm not really seeing these things because I'm not looking at my daughter critically. Yeah, critically, objectively. So I thought maybe you were being hypersensitive to these issues, or you were just a real critical, negative person. Keep in mind, I didn't really know you. And it takes years to really know
We
someone.
didn't live together before we were married, and we were a long distance. For those of you who have watched before, you already know we had a long distance relationship. So when we moved in together, when we got married, that's when we really started to learn each other.
But even when we were dating, you were picking up on things, but you were holding back and not talking about stuff too much. You would tenderly bring things up, but
Yeah.
being a good old dense guy, I didn't catch on to that. And I'm like, yeah, whatever, you'll get used to it or something like that. So there was things that was definitely eating at you, but even though you've explained them to me or made mention of it, I wasn't picking up on it. I had no clue what RAD was. I had no idea of the magnitude or the chaotic sneaky chaos that this all was to be. Just thought it was ornery kid, you know.
So when did you start noticing the things that I was saying was maybe true?
I don't know exact period of time. Yeah, after we had gotten married and we were living together, probably, I don't know, I'll just pick 6 months into our marriage or something. There was always a lot of chaos and arguing and stuff going on. Then I would see the things if you pointed them out point blank of what they were. You explained them in layman's terms that I could understand, and like, okay, yeah, I see she'd done that. She was doing that weird sexual thing with a hot dog type of thing. Yeah, that's not right. Everyone knows
Actually,
that's
I
not
forgot
right.
about the hot dogs until you just said that.
Yeah. But then, you know, in my
She was
dad,
banned from eating hot dogs.
yeah, she was doing sexually like suggestive things with hot dogs. Now, as a guy, I kind of default back to the old perverse, sexual, funny, jokey type of group of people I hung out with. That was like not totally uncommon for adults to do. With some of the people I hung with, it was like kind of went in one ear out the other. But I still knew that, hey, that's something a kid shouldn't do.
So do you feel like maybe she had learned that from your friends or your lifestyle before we got married?
Who knows?
You weren't really putting it together that that's not a normal behavior. You were just kind of like, well, that's
Yeah, I was like,
the kind
okay.
of people I hung out with.
Well, and I would like to say, when you brought it to my attention, I'm like, yeah, that's not a normal behavior. Then I moved on with my life. Squirrel.
Busy,
Yeah.
running a store
Yeah.
and taking care of everything at home, and
Yeah, so I was always massively busy. I mean, I was a guy who worked 50 to 60 plus hours a week, and active, trying to take care of a home, and then after we got together, trying to, create a marriage, a family,
yeah.
and trying to learn, do that too. So everything's always been pulling at my time, my free time.
It still does.
Because she has me do a lot of chores right out here. Remodeling the kitchen, this and that and that and this.
So, what advice do you feel like would be useful to other dads out there? Maybe they're just learning about RAD. Maybe their wife is bringing up these behaviors that the dad really doesn't see. Because most of the time these kids do hide it from the dad. And our daughter was.
Yep.
So what would be good advice for those dads out there that are maybe struggling to hear their wife?
Well, first of all, you got to be a good husband. And if you don't know how to be a good husband, first of all, you got to figure that out, because you have to be able to be very considerate and conscious and considerate and willing to put yourself off to the side and put your wife first and listen to her and truly what she's trying to say. We so often will listen to the offensive words they say toward us, or words that are maybe putting down your child, and you kind of take offense to that. Or they come out and just insult you because they're so exasperated and hurting, they don't know how to say things. And I think we've all done that. We say things in the heat of the moment that we shouldn't have. Some of the things that still fly out of my mouth, I'm like, what? That's not how I wanted it to be when it came out. But yes, but first and foremost, truly, you have to learn to be a husband. And I was previously married, and with this marriage, I truly now know I never even knew anything about being a husband until this marriage. But this marriage is so different too, because I also came to Christ and became a Christian, and I give Christ all credit for our marriage still being in place, and for me being a husband. Here still almost 9 years later, we had crazy life.
Yeah, RAD can tear a family
Crazy.
apart.
And we could not have gotten through it if it wasn't for Jesus Christ. If you don't believe, I'm sorry, because he's real. And I believe he's real. And he has shown me that through what He has done through our marriage. He hasn't fixed it. He's got us through our trials.
Yeah.
Through our belief in him. And you know,
he didn't fix the RAD situation.
He did in kind of a way, but we had to go through a lot of trials. And of course, if you've watched these videos, you know all about our trials and our story with our particular RAD, which in comparison to many of yours is minuscule. There's so many people who always has something worse.
Yeah.
So when you think you got it horrible or bad, there's someone out there suffering a whole lot more. And some of the stuff that we hear about, that people tell us about, are scary. And sorry, I got a little off of my
Went down a
topic
rabbit
there.
trail. I do that all the
I like
time.
rabbit trails, especially when I'm talking about Jesus.
Well, okay, so back on speaking to the dads out there,
Right.
or even to the moms, because a lot of times I talk to moms who tell me they had their husband watch these videos.
Oh, okay, get back on track here. You gotta listen to your wife. You gotta try to hear what she's saying, and you just gotta have to put all your other interests and stuff on hold. That's part of being, of course, getting a good husband. But there's going to be so much turmoil and rabbit trails, so to say, for you to have to go down and distract you. You're not going to sense it. You're not going to see everything that your wife's seeing, because for the most part, the RAD is focused on the mother figure, and they're the target. And the child is so sneaky conniving. They are far more sneaky conniving than most guys can comprehend a small kid being.
Anyone, not just men, can comprehend, but it's hard for anyone to comprehend how manipulative these kids can actually be. For the average person, it would take a great deal of thought to manipulate something. It just comes natural to these kids, so it's just hard to understand.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you just can't put your kid on a pedestal. And I think, I don't know about the rest of the world, but in this country, we seem to really put our children nowadays on a pedestal, and we almost treat them like little gods, and bow down to their every need and want and desire, or we do whatever they want just to shut them up if they're crying or, you know, making a stink about something, and we just give them everything and all this, and it's, we can't do that. We just can't do that. And but anyhow, they're not as great as we think they are. Speaking from a dad standpoint, I thought my kid was all that in a bag of chips. I really thought he was going to be the next, world or community leader. Not that I, was so proud type of thing of her, but I kind of was that type of person. I just felt that she was going to fall in my footsteps and be a community leader, as I have been at many different times. And then, as time went on, started realizing, well, life doesn't always turn out the way you think it's going to turn out. And later on, realized this was one of the great trials in our life that we have had to go through to get to the next area in our life to deal with.
Yeah. So is there anything else you'd like to say to the dads out there that are maybe just learning about RAD, or maybe they're in the middle of the struggle and
I'm sorry you have to go through it. I'm sorry if you don't realize what you're going through yet. But educate yourself. Put all your other interests and focuses and things on hold. They'll be there later. But really start to dig into what RAD is all about. And I'm not going to go through all the definitions and stuff because you're already in the process of learning what that is from previous videos and other information. But when we had realized there was a problem, that this kid was doing some weird things, but we couldn't put our finger on it. She had gone through different types of, as we were flailing, trying to find every other source, every other kind of diagnosis, and putting her on drugs, and
went to this doctor, went to that doctor,
psychologist, psychiatrist,
wrote letters to governors,
no, the senator, trying to get some special exception for some kind of mental hospital in Washington State. There really is nothing, and so we were flailing, and one day my mother's friend, who knew the story, what we were going through, had been talking about it to her beautician, and the beautician had a RAD kid and said, hey, that sounds like RAD, as she...
Reactive attachment disorder. Yeah,
she told the story, and so the neighbor, after got her hair done, came over to me, looked me up and said, hey, you might want to look at this. And so I just did a basic Google search, typed in RAD, and found some definitions. It was like 95% finally was right on. All the other diagnoses and things, my daughter would fit probably 80% of them, but it was never close to 100%.
Yeah, there was always the weird...
There was always something that was a little bit different than bipolar or schizophrenic or whatnot. And so that's why we were never really able to fix her.
Yeah.
Because we weren't fixing the problem. And so when we finally discovered RAD, it was verified RAD as we went through our process, and 100% RAD. Of course, by the time and the age we figured it all out, therapy was in-house therapy, where you can go to a respite home, and they can go to a respite home for weeks or months.
Treatment centers, yeah.
And that's sometimes works for the very young RAD kids if you can get to them soon enough. But her being at, what was it, 12?
I think she was around
That was
12.
at the cusp of what they felt was not really, but we could try it anyhow.
Yeah, they flat out told us that her recovery was very unlikely because of her age.
And these places are very expensive too. You have to pay out of pocket. There are some situations where you could get some insurance aid, but you just have to ask questions to find out. But some of these places, for many, many months worth of therapy will cost, or years worth of therapy will cost more than what a lot of people make in a year.
Yeah.
So, like I said, there is no solution. It's a trial, and I think this is a byproduct, RAD kids, of where our society has gone, and the lives and the sin and stuff we've chose to live, and it's kind of a byproduct of it, because I think there's always been RAD kids in society. It's just nowadays there's getting to be more understanding and comprehension of what RAD is, so we can actually see it better.
Yeah.
And
well,
call it out.
Back, like maybe in the 30s and the 40s, maybe when it was first starting and there was a first few people, or maybe it started before that, but I guess I'm just saying back then there weren't as many generations of RAD, and now we see more generations of RAD in families.
Yeah, I think it's a growing epidemic, and plain and simple, I say it that way again. I think it's a growing epidemic, because you have a child, a human being that has no empathy. Think about what that is, no empathy. Look up the definition if you don't know what empathy means. And that's a scary person.
It is.
All they do is act, and they pretend, but there's no heart there. There's no true emotion, there's no true knowing of what love, and so someone who grows up to be an adult, who has no empathy, knows only how to pretend, and pretends, and knows only how to teach it. And what they pass down to the future generations when they have kids. There's
if RAD is created by not feeling love and compassion from your birth mom, care and nurturing from birth mom, and you grow up and you're RAD, you can't love and nurture your own child. You raise it the same with what skills you've learned along the way, and that child ends up being RAD too because of how you get RAD.
Yeah, if you don't know what it's like to be loved, how can you love someone else?
Yeah.
How can you teach that love?
So
So this stuff is very deeply ingrained. It's not just like learning how to read or write.
well, something I would like to say, something that we were taught in by different therapists, is to be a united front, because
It's huge.
yeah, any enemy, and that's, not that your child is your enemy, but they are viewing you as an enemy. So any enemy is going to try to divide to conquer. This is a common knowledge thing. So
They will try to split you apart, and you don't know it, but it's through all the kind of the chaos and the sneaky little things.
yeah,
Now remember,
triangulation.
remember, guys, you are one with your wife.
Yeah.
That means whether you've known your wife for 1 year or 50 years, she still may be the target of your child, and you have to come and be united and one with your wife, and you can't take your child's side. You got to be able to hear what your wife is saying to you in amongst all the emotion and hurt and pain and exasperation and frustration and irritation. You got to be able to try to pick out the message that she's speaking to you amongst that, and often it's biting your tongue and not reacting to her hurt and what she's feeling at that time. And that's one very big trick, not trick, but tactic that you should definitely use, because there's a lot of emotions that will roar through with this.
It is hard to hear what someone's saying when they're yelling at you. So, and then there's crying and screaming, and it's hard to hear what they're really saying. So, yeah, being quick to listen and slow to speak, like the Bible says, is perfect for RAD parents.
Mm-hmm.
To be able to listen to each other. And
I always figured that if I ever had a tattoo, it would be that one. Be quick to hear, slow to speak, because that was really something that I had to abide by.
So we've tried to give you guys a little bit. If there's anything that we've missed, or if you guys have any more questions, please feel free to contact me on Facebook. My name is Tina Louise Golick. And yeah, so, or you could leave it in the comments below. So you guys have a great day, and we'll talk to you next time.
Bye-bye. My name's Mike. I wear black shoes with white socks.
And you've got white toothpaste all over your shirt.
I do. I don't ever do that.